What's up, everybody?
What's up? Good morning.
Yeah, my name's Chiedo, you all know. Kind of takes the edge off the introduction, but I'm the founder and part owner of a company called Generate Impact, which was previously known as Chiedo Labs. So we did websites, marketing, local development. I ran it for 8 years. Today it's led by my business partner, Mike Forster. So if you've met him around town, same company, different guy. Don't work there anymore. Today I work for a company called GitHub, which is part of Microsoft, as Director of Software Engineering. And I'm here talking about this because I love getting people talking about the future. So thank you for having me. It's funny, as I was talking to Kevin, when was this, like 2 years ago, a year ago?
A year ago, yeah.
A year ago, about something called Bitcoin. Have y'all heard of Bitcoin? And I was just like, yo, crypto is the future. And I still believe it's the future, but when I came in today, he was like, how's it going with crypto?
I asked you if you owned any FTX.
Yeah, I did not. Not your keys, not your crypto, but that's for a different conversation. Today I want to talk about the metaverse, and a question you might be asking is what I mean. No good reason in particular. I wouldn't call myself an expert on the topic, but I enjoy talking about it. So everything I say from here on out, that's your context. Why the metaverse? Because I believe it's inevitable. And I believe the metaverse will be the gateway to the next major wave of technological changes of our lifetime. Like stuff like the internet, like the iPhone, like huge changes. Because when the internet gained mass adoption, all sorts of things followed. So, the internet happened, and what followed? We got the smartphone, right? And that's drastically changed our lives. We got the smart home, kind of, right? We got Amazon, right? Could you imagine like Borders or these bookstores like competing with like a computer like 25 years ago? Because of the internet, we got Airbnb, right? We got competitors to hotel chains that don't have hotels. We got Uber, taxi companies without taxis, and that is just the beginning. So with the metaverse, we have another wave of unimaginable changes on the horizon, which is extremely important to think about if you believe that mass adoption is possible by like 2030, which I do. The question is, do all of you? Well, like I said, we have 30 minutes, and in 30 minutes, I plan to cover a brief explanation of the metaverse, a few disclaimers, some potential use cases, and how to keep your finger on the pulse if you are so curious. We're going to start by talking about dimensions. This is going to be a nerdy 5 minutes, so I apologize. Okay, so why are we talking about dimensions? Because we live in a world that's made of how many dimensions? Yeah, there has spatial dimensions. It's only someone who says 4 who's like very into special relativity. Yeah, okay, 3 spatial dimensions, right? So we understand 3 spatial dimensions intuitively. But what we need to think about is everything we do in our lives that is not intuitive. So on the left, we have a line. How many dimensions is a line? Spatial dimensions? Yeah, 1 spatial dimension. You mean you can only go up and down, or if you flip it around, you can only go left and right, but you can't have both, right? So now imagine your computer screen, right? So our computer screens are 2 dimensions, 2 spatial dimensions. Imagine if it was only 1 dimension, right? And that's all you could see, just 1 sliver of information. Yeah, it'd suck, right? You'd just be getting 1 sliver of information. And it wouldn't matter how hard your computer tried. It could be the exact same computer. If the screen was limited to 1 spatial dimension, what it could communicate to you would be extremely limited, and it would be extremely limited experience. So think about how much more information your computer can show you when it's connected to a 2-dimensional screen. Same computer, different screen, right? 2-dimensional, up, down, left, right. With a screen that only had 1 dimension, the only thing the computer could show you were vertical lines, or dots. But with a 2-dimensional screen, your computer can show you pictures. And then once pictures are possible, videos are possible. Once videos are possible, things like Zoom are possible. And computer games are enjoyable. You could probably play a computer game within the scope of a line, but it wouldn't be that much fun. Much more fun to play Call of Duty. So with a 1-dimensional screen, your computer is bursting at the seams with energy, trying to show you so much more, but all you can see is a glimpse, a sliver of what it's trying to show you. Think about how much more useful a 2-dimensional screen is than a 1-dimensional screen. Sometimes I'll call it the interface, interface between the computer and the person, how the computer is communicating. So what I'm making the argument for is that even though your 2-dimensional screens let you do way more than a 1-dimensional screen would, it's still just a sliver of what computers want to show you. interacting with computers and phones with our bodies and necks stuck in place, right, like this, like it's not the end we're all seeking. Okay, so the difference between 1 versus 2, a line versus a rectangle. We covered how computers are bursting at the seams of information they want to present us, but they are limited by the screens we use today. Screens that are 2D, even though we're people that are used to experiencing the world in 3D. 3D, 3 dimensions, 2D, 2 dimensions. Right, not as limited as they would be if it was limited to 1 dimension, right? But we're still limited to this. We've just accepted it. He's having a blast. There we go. So our bodies and our senses are tailor-made to understand 3 dimensions. So we understand objects that represent 3 spatial dimensions and objects that are more simple, representing 1 or 2. But computers are capable of showing us information that is in 4 dimensions, 5 dimensions, 6 dimensions, or more dimensions. But we don't intuitively know how to think about 4 or more spatial dimensions or how we would move around them, so we need not bother getting that much information from our computers. We understand cubes, right? Everyone knows what a cube is. Cube has squares, sides that all like connect. That's good enough explanation. But we don't understand hypercubes. Has anyone encountered a hypercube before, at least on like Google?
What is that one?
Oh, yeah, tesseract, yeah. So hypercube is a shape that has cubes for sides, right? It's very weird. The same way a cube has squares for sides, and a cube is like a 3-dimensional square. A hypercube is like a 4-dimensional cube. If you look it up, it gets real weird real fast. But that's the point, right? So we don't have to go that far. We can stop at 3 dimensions. Yet for some reason we stopped at rectangles and we think that's the end-all be-all. We stopped at 2 dimensions. No, we can still go to 3. So the problem is we're currently only interacting with computers in 2 spatial dimensions through black mirrors. Has anyone seen that show? Black mirrors, right? That sometimes glow. Our phones, our monitors, our screens, and while we can't handle 4 dimensions, we can handle 3. Remember how much more information the computer was able to provide us with, and how much more utility when we went from 1 dimension to 2, right? This next jump is even larger. Okay, so 3 dimensions. On the left, we have this like awkward, socially acceptable rectangle we've become accustomed to looking at all day. 2D Mario on a 2D screen. Excuse me. Our senses are intuitively in tune with 3 dimensions, yet we spend so much of our day, so much of our time glued to these screens that limit us to engaging in 2. What's behind, that mountain, right? Or that, what are these green things, like plumbing tubes? What do you even call those? I think so. Okay, cool. He's a plumber, right?
Yeah,
He's a plumber, yeah. Do plumbers usually go into the tubes? Is that how that works? That's not the point. Excuse me. But on this 2D game, you can't go like behind things, you can't go in things, you can't go through things, just like to the left and right of things. But on the right, we have a 3-dimensional game, yet through a 2-dimensional interface, right? 2-dimensional screen, so still limited. You can control a character that can go behind the tree, that can go into things, that can go over things, under things, through things, right? You can do so much more, but it's like you look into a window, you yourself are stuck on the other side. Raise your hand if you've played a PlayStation game with 3D graphics before. I'm using like one of those joystick things. Was it intuitive the first time you played? Yeah. Most people say no, right? You're like trying to like control this other character doing things with your finger that's doing things with their body, and it's just weird, right? You're trying to do 3D stuff in a 3D game with 3D graphics through a screen that presents a 2D experience. You're not in the 3D game, you're controlling a character that's in a 3D game. Kind of like controlling a puppet, which I've never tried, but I assume is not easy, which is why they have puppet masters. And, it's not like a easy craft to get into. Is anyone here a puppet master? Okay, cool.
I dabble.
Of course. Just pulls out the like, finally. So yeah, what do we need?
Presented next week.
We need better interfaces, right? It's like this, right? The mouse of the future. Imagine a mouse like this. Might be a little odd to put on, first few generations, but capable. With a mouse like this, right? You wouldn't have to learn how to use it. You would just use your hands, right? If you had hands to use. If you had hands to use, you figured that out when you were an infant. Excuse me. Or the controller like this, right? See the vest, see the gloves, the headset. It's called a haptic suit, which moves your digital avatar in the digital world as your physical body moves through the physical world. So instead of doing all this like joystick stuff, you just walk around, right, and just do things. And if you've ever played games like Call of Duty or whatnot, there's this concept of like looking at like your indicators to see if like you've been like hit or whatever, or sometimes they give you a vibration, but you're not really sure where you've been hit in the game and whatnot. With a haptic suit, you just feel the hit at the place that you got hit, and you keep playing. It's higher bandwidth communication. Not as hard, right? You don't want to actually feel that, but your physical body would feel the same thing through vibrations. And whenever I show people things like this, like, this is crazy. No, never that. But there was a time when computers were the size of this room, and if you had told somebody they'd be in your pocket, they would have laughed at you. Oh, and then there's spatial audio. Thank you, Apple. The way I've heard it described is imagine someone singing a song to you while running around you in circles. You don't want them to do that, but it gets the point across. It's sound that moves around you that's much closer to the real world experience. It's like surround sound, but portable. You know, if I'm facing this way, it kind of messes with the audio a bit. If I move all around, the audio changes. The orientation matters of you, the perceiver, and the object that's sending the audio. Whew, okay, so you got through the really, really nerdy part. So, what is the metaverse? Disclaimer number one, the metaverse will not be owned by Meta, formerly known as Facebook. I'm going to say Facebook from here on out and not Meta to be less confusing. Facebook may own a lot of the hardware from here on out that people use to interact with the metaverse, but the same way people use physical Apple products to interact with the internet, people will use physical Facebook products to interact with the metaverse. Apple does not own the internet. Microsoft does not own the internet. I work for Microsoft, caveat. Google does not own the internet. But if you're trying to get to the internet and all the stuff people create on YouTube, social media, Wikipedia, emails, and all the things you do online, you often use an Apple computer or an Apple iPad or a Microsoft laptop or an Android smartphone. Facebook wants to be the company that creates the computers of the future because nobody uses a Facebook smartphone to get to the internet or a Facebook pad, right? And Facebook doesn't like that they're in that situation where they have to be, they have to cater to the whims of Apple, so to speak. So all the stuff you do in the metaverse will not be owned by Facebook. The metaverse exists with or without Facebook. Facebook just might end up with the most popular VR headsets and VR mouses that people use to get to the metaverse. Or they have like these little treadmill things, you actually feel like you're running. You've seen those, Ready Player One?
It's a great movie if you want to explain this.
Yeah, you know, good call out. So I'm going to focus this conversation on the positive, but please watch these movies, and then you'll understand the other side of my perspective on the metaverse. It's not all rosy. You've got to watch The Matrix, best movie of all time. You've got to watch Ready Player One. Not a great movie, but it's very relevant here. Amazing book, movie, All right, so here's the definition. The metaverse is the internet made accessible via 3 spatial dimensions. That's why I had to define all that stuff earlier. Yielding immersive, seemingly physical experiences. They're not actually physical, but the point is to seem physical, right? And that's my shot, just like me writing something down. Like that's not on like Merriam-Webster or something like that. You know, it'd be like the internet you experience today, but instead, everything being all around you. The sound is all around you, right? And your physical body moves through the internet instead of feeling like you're looking at the internet through a window. So imagine I'm not actually here today, but instead you're all wearing headsets at home. Imagine they're not goofy, and imagine they're like 10 years into the future and actually comfortable. And like Ed here just like presses a button on his glasses. And it's like, whoa! Just imagine that, right? So imagine I'm not actually here. You all have headsets at home, but you're seeing all this in the room right now. You're all sitting still, right? So like you don't actually like have to be here because we're not actually slapping 5s, right? You're all sitting in the same place, and you could get this kind of experience with a headset. Not the experience of like the slapping 5s we done on the way in, you know. But if I want to do this in like with family that's in like Australia, right, which I have, and like family that's in England, I could get a much better experience than Zoom. Not quite this, but also not quite thousands of dollars for everybody involved. So All this, except we're all digital versions of ourselves, avatars. We may or may not have legs. It's a metaverse joke that techie people would get, but it's okay. So Mark Zuckerberg, he's like launched this thing called like Horizon Worlds, and no one has legs. It's like the weirdest thing. It's like they have all this technology and they couldn't figure out legs. They just float. Yeah. Okay, so what we get today from the internet is just a glimpse of what's possible. Our interaction with screens are like interactions with windows, where your engagement is limited, like you're on the outside, of a house watching a party through the window. You want to open that window and walk through, right? Be in the middle of the party. Am I right? No, that's weird. Don't watch people outside their house. We're having a party, then walk in. I tricked you all. See if you all listened. But the analogy still applies. You probably want to walk through the door. You don't want to control the remote control car from your doorstep with the remote in your hands, right? You want to ride inside the car and experience what the car is experiencing with your hands on the wheel. And everyone's like, why don't you just like drive a car? It's like, many reasons, right? Like risk, right? Like that's one thing. I'll go much faster in the metaverse than I will in the real world. And two, opportunity, right? Some people just don't have the opportunity. A lot of this whole the whole thing we're doing with like digital experiences, and the irony is, we're trying to make these digital experiences seem more and more real, more and more lifelike, because we want to live in reality. Who would have guessed it? Humans want to live in the real world. But we also have the other parts of our humanity that like to imagine and experience more and push the limits. And these digital experiences let us do that. It lets me connect with my mom in Australia, something that just like a normal human interaction would not make possible. I could not yell, "Mom!" and have her hear me, on the other side of the planet. So we use technology to bridge that gap. Excuse me. With this technology in the metaverse, we're trying to get these digital experiences to be closer and closer to real, so we can do the things that sometimes we just don't have any natural way to do that we still think is worthwhile. In the metaverse, you could attend a live concert where your favorite artist is there as an avatar. Performing sounds weird, but that's already happening in a game called Fortnite, just without the headsets. You can actually go watch a concert of like an avatar dancing around. And they're just like way bigger and they're like giants because that's what they want to do. It's everything you can already do on the internet, but with the ability to get these things on the internet to feel more like real life. So the internet today, we're limited via the interfaces we have, the mouse, the keyboard, the computer screen, most headphones and speakers. But the internet tomorrow, the metaverse, is just an internet with better interfaces, right? Metaverse gloves, infinite treadmills, immersive experiences, 3D apps in those immersive experiences, spatial audio, virtual headsets. Big, bulky, heavy now, but there was a time when computers were the size of this room. And why do I think it's inevitable? Because it will be profitable. It will be so profitable to the companies who figure it out. Historically, as consumers, we've continued to pay again and again for digital experiences that are closer and closer to real. I covered that a few moments ago. Even when we can't tell the difference. Can you really tell the difference between a 4K TV and an 8K TV? I cannot. I couldn't tell the difference between a DVD and a VHS the first time my dad brought it. Eventually, I'm like, oh yeah, this is better. But we're like seeking things that don't really provide that much more value, but it does intuitively connect with something we want, which is reality. And the closer and closer we can get our technology to that, the more and more we're willing to pay. So we continue to try and make our digital realities more and more real, so we can do more and more things and have more and more experiences. And we say this and that, and no, and don't, but we vote with our dollars and we vote with our attention time and time again. And companies know this. It's why Facebook is putting everything on the line to be a major player in the metaverse. They want to be the Apple of the metaverse, the Microsoft of the metaverse. They don't want to be the Facebook of the metaverse. They want to be the critical player in this next wave. Okay, so this has been super theoretical. How might it be used? Well, many ways, like online business, right? Like 25 years ago, who could have imagined search engine optimization, right? Or websites is something every business needed. Like the concept wouldn't even have made sense if you tried to explain it to a business owner. Yet today, SEO and a website are absolutely table stakes to succeed in almost any business at scale. No one can tell you what the equivalent will be in the metaverse, but you can see the parallel. How much money there is to be made to the companies that figure this out. Imagine being able to see how an iPhone might feel in the palm of your hand before ordering it online, so you know how big the iPhone Pro Max really feels. The names have gotten terrible. Or imagine being able to see how a clothing item might fit you, right? Assuming your avatar has been customized to your in real life dimensions. You can't see how it feels, but how might it fit? The companies who want to have an edge will need to have professional 3D renderings of their inventory made. And someone has to generate those renderings, right? It'll be like a whole new market. And we've seen that before. There was a time when you needed to get professional photos taken of your inventory to put it on your website, whereas 10 years prior, it wasn't even something that crossed people's minds. Ooh, and this one gets real. Remote work. 25 years ago, could you imagine remote work as we know it today, Zoom, Slack? Remote work is going to get a whole new meaning. Now, right now, we have a problem of disconnected supply and demand for many of the jobs we can't find workers for. And we have jobs that are not safe, yet people have to put themselves in harm's way to work them. We have people on the other side of the world who want nothing more than a job that pays, as well as the jobs we can't find workers for right here. I'd argue technology is coming that will allow remote workers to wear haptic suits on the other side of the globe and remotely control robots doing physical tasks in our backyard. So this is an actual robot from Tesla. This is not quite what you're seeing in this video. They have a computer program controlling the robot, and then what you see here is the 3D representation of what the robot sees. But it's conceivable to see things flipped around where somebody's wearing a headset. They're seeing this 3D world over in, like, let's say Zimbabwe, right? And they're picking up this 3D watering can, and then on the other side of the world, a robot's actually watering plants, right? Yeah. So the technology is coming that will allow these remote workers to do these physical tasks in our backyard, and we can sidestep all the politics and whatnot. That makes it so much more complicated. Or even desire, right? Some people don't want to leave home; they just want to work elsewhere. That's why I live in Harrisonburg, right? I live in Dayton, but I work for Microsoft and GitHub in San Francisco, right? And eventually, robots will be able to do these jobs that humans don't want to do, and humans won't need to be involved at all. So you have humans controlling these robots for enough years, robots learn to do it themselves. Humans could be sitting on the beach drinking margaritas. There'll be a lot of open questions there, right? Hopefully the robots don't revolt. But I do believe in a world where the robots can do the jobs humans don't want to do. Not all of them, but some of the jobs humans don't want to do is a world where the pie is much larger. The robots can work 24/7 with much smaller margins of error. Oh, and then disruption. 25 years ago, did you think business leaders would be competing with Amazon or companies or lodging companies without hotels or taxi companies without taxis? It would have been inconceivable. Anyone's got the reference? Thank you. All right, so there is an opportunity for anyone to disrupt any category by being the company who incorporates these new technologies. Imagine a bar that doesn't provide drinks, right? Or a restaurant that doesn't provide food. Like, how often do you go to bars or restaurants? It's not actually the food you want, it's the social experience, right? Sometimes it's the food, but not always. You may think it's silly, but so was the idea of a taxi company without taxis. The people who are able to think outside the box like this are absolutely going to change the game. The possibilities are endless. New markets will be born, completely new categories, and disruptions to every business model will be on the table, and it's going to be wild. Okay, so to keep your finger on the pulse, we're running out of time. We end at 8, right? 8 o'clock time in the shoot. Okay, cool. So, yeah, 3 books. I won't describe them, but they're good ones if you want to know how to actually innovate and test new ideas. Book called Flatland. It's amazing. A romance of many dimensions. The subtitle tells you all. And 2 podcasts. The Birdcast helps you keep your finger on the pulse with new technologies that are coming out, what Apple's doing, Microsoft's doing. All In Podcast is a great podcast to keep your finger on the pulse of the intersection of business and technology, new startups that are launching. Polarizing hosts, but a lot of good information. And then just try it. I'm pretty sure you can try VR headsets at Best Buy or something. You can also buy some of your wearing your entrepreneurial business hats, like $400. You don't need a computer to do it. And many of your friends probably have these things sitting in their closets, not getting used. All right, so whether or not we see how the metaverse will impact our world, I believe the metaverse is inevitable, and maybe by this point, you do too, maybe. The tech companies that have drastically changed our lives in the past decade are all in. Facebook rebranded to Meta. Whether or not that's going to work out for them is to be determined. But they aligned their whole business with the Metaverse and invested $10 billion in 2021 on the Metaverse vision. There have been rumors that Google, Apple, and Amazon are all making plays at the Metaverse as well, with Apple rumored to be releasing a headset in 2023. And when Apple releases something, at least a few years later, it's pretty darn usable. Still under wraps, but you can bet your money on all these companies doing something to take advantage of the opportunity and the technological changes that will be driven by the Metaverse. Microsoft is investing in the Metaverse, products like Microsoft Mesh, collaboration and meetings in the Metaverse, like Zoom, but like this, right? Remember, smartphones have only had mass adoption for normal people. When I say mass adoption, I mean like where I can go into any room and say like, hey, do you have an iPhone, right? Only mass adoption for like 15 years. Social media, like 20 years. The internet, personal computers, 25 years. And then mass adoption for Zoom, where I can go into any room and just assume that like most people know about it. For Zoom, it's like 3 years, right? Like the pandemic just really pushed that forward. Yet these technologies have radically changed our lives and our world, and what I'm saying is another wave is coming. One of the biggest technological waves of any of our futures. And each of us who wish to shape that wave need to keep our fingers on the pulse. And to those of us who do, almost anything is possible. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your time.